He had lived in my shadow for many years, and yet I knew that he had almost as much skill on the battlefield as I did. There was no animosity in our parting, and we remained friends. It was the loss of his companionship that hurt. It was exacerbated when Sir Edward and Sir Thomas, both long-time comrades, along with Sir Di, all left my service to return to England. Sir Edward had been Ned of Lincoln, and I had knighted both him and Tall Tom. They stayed with me for some months after our victory, but their full purses and the thought of a life in England was too great a lure, and they left the company. Di and Robin had been with me for a long time, and I had thought they would stay forever. While Robin, the commander of my archers, was happy to do so, Di, who had been my squire, also chose to head back to England. As with all those who had fought with me, there was no acrimony, but I felt disappointed. Others left to join other companies as we had no prospect of war for a while. Some men crave such things. The men who remained on our books were the core of my lances and archers, my officers. The result was that I was left with fewer senior leaders in whom I could confide. It was left to Robin and the new captain of my men-at-arms, Michael, to be my close companions. Even then it was not as close as it might have been, as they had their own homes. They were close, but I no longer saw them every day. My world became a world of women. The only men in the house were the servants. My home was Donina's. She understood why the men had left, but she also knew that my name would draw men to the white banner of my company when we needed them. She lavished the money we saved on their pay on Castagnaro, and the hall became a small palace. Chapter 1. Politics in Italy were complicated. This was not England, where one man, King Richard, ruled it all, and while lords might conspire against others, there was no open war. Italy had many city-states, some huge like Milan and Florence, and others small like Lucca and Mantua. I knew why Padua had hired Giovanni d'Urbaldini. The Venetians were making war on the Genoese, and Venice coveted the lands around Treviso, which belonged to Padua. To keep Venice from taking Treviso, the da Carrara family had to ally themselves with Venice in times of war. The war between the two preeminent masters of the sea was nothing to do with Italy, but with islands and lands in Greece. Padua was an ally of Venice, and while the war was largely fought at sea, the victories of the Hungarians and the loss of Dalmatia had hurt Venice. Giovanni was hired as insurance against the Genoese attack by land. Bernabo Visconti was not averse to taking advantage of distractions, and Milan might try to gobble up Paduan land if Genoa sent men overland to Venice. Giovanni was more than capable of hiring men to protect Padua and ingratiate himself with Venice. Florence just watched on, an interested spectator. Genoa was a rival to all the other city-states, and since the demise of the Pisans, the seas were ruled by Genoa and Venice. This war was a bloody struggle for control of the seas. Florence had no ships, and they would watch. My sharp sword would be kept sheathed. The Doge of Florence would await the outcome, and then, if things were aligned like the stars, then my company might be used to take advantage of the situation. This meant that my pared-down company had no war to fight, and we hemorrhaged more men every day as they left to join other warring companies. Many joined Giovanni. My men and I still trained every day, but the company was slimmed down. We were like men who had once eaten well but now looked skeletal. The pension from Florence was not enough to maintain a large army. I still had English archers and more than 100 lances. A lance was made up of a man-at-arms, his squire, and a foot soldier. Other companies often had an archer or crossbowman in each lance, but I had been an archer, and I was English. I knew the benefit of a massed band of archers. It was one reason for our success. They were expensive to maintain, but the ones who had stayed with me were the best in Italy. What we needed was a paymaster, and the Venetian-Genoese war was fought by others. Florence did not want to be